I'm sure we'll be back here in 15 more to celebrate another couple hundred books in what'll seem like time that has gone by too fast. It's a real honor to have been engaged in at least 3 ways with this great press. First, with this 2008 chapbook that you published of mine a long time ago. It was great to go back and rediscover it. And even more, I'm really grateful on behalf of Martha Collins and myself that you published Ceremonial Entries, basically the collected poems of Joseph DeRoche. And I also should say that it's been an honor to be a consumer. I haven't read all 200, but I've read a number of them. The way we'll do tonight's event, I will give a very short introduction to Joseph DeRoche, saving a more insightful one for Martha, and I'll read a handful of his poems. Then Martha will read some of his poems and talk about him a bit. Then I'll read a little bit from my 2008 chapbook, and then I know a number of you would like to share some remembrances or ask some questions about Joe DeRoche, and we also have a little surprise in store for you related to that. Just to give you some thumbnail sketches, Joe DeRoche was born in 1938 in Portland, Maine, or right outside of Portland, Maine. And he came down here to Boston in the late 1950s to be a student at Northeastern University. Shortly after graduating, he met George Starbuck and Ann Sexton and became a member of the Robert Lowell Circle and the workshop over there. Those folks wrote recommendations and encouraged him to go to the Iowa Writers Workshop, where he went to, graduated in 1964, and then moved back to Boston. When he moved back in 65, he started something, or was part of a founding group that founded something called Dignity Boston, which is an inclusive Catholic community for people of all sexual orientations. He was also an ordained lay order of the St. Francis, and a co-founder of something called Stone Soup Poetry that many of you, if you're from the area, you know. He's very unique in the time of somebody who was equally accepted and walked among both what Robert Lowell called the raw and the cooked, Lowell, Sexton, etc., but also John Wieners and the group around that. Perhaps his biggest legacy is over 40 years of being a professor of poetry and creative writing at Northeastern University. I'm gonna read just 5 short poems. The first 2 I'm gonna read are poems that he really liked. One, because he would tell us that, but 2, from about 1975 until just shortly before he died in 2013, he edited something called the Heath Introduction to Poetry, which was really one of the high school sort of standing anthologies that would be taught in high school and freshman college classes. And these 2 poems are poems that he often had that he would slip in the section on Joseph DeRoche in the Heath Introduction to Poetry. First one's called Blonde. Blonde. I'm not going to invite you for once into my life. Others may call you beautiful or handsome, but not from my lips any praises. This is the way it should be with strangers, always. What if your hair be the hair that shines bright in dark places? So does the sun in the eye of the storm, and we are just winds flying about you. But not from my lips will you hear a sharp cry in the street, some summons to follow. What if I dodge you all night, loiter behind you? What matter? Off you go, home to your cloister of ciphers. I will not praise you. I sprawl, instead, on a splendor of pillows, in the late guttering light. Tilted to sleep, I am biting my lips. Just by doing that, I wish I was more like my father. Like if I was like my father and smoked 3 packs of Salem Menthol 100s every day, I'd be able to really read the way that Joe did. He was Salem Menthol 100s weren't his thing, but he was up there in the packs. Second one's called Home for the Girl Who Would Bear Flowers into the New World Like Bullets. You have asked me to become a flower. I know only one way to do it, so that you'll remember me and never forget. Therefore I lie here with one small paring knife, newly sharpened, with my dental drill saying, "Watch, this is for you." Thus I cut my slow face into two delicate parts, folding aside the flaps like blossoms, like origami, great paper sails or wings. I remove the eyes. They burn like onyx or black bees on their cushion of raw flesh. I wish they were favored color of blue. You would prefer it, but this will do. This is exciting. Now, with the drill, I saw through the translucent cell of my skull, and behold, here is my mind. Gray, like the hardest stone, but softer than water. Cold, too, and quite dull, next to the rainbow. Within me, I have yet to reveal. For beneath my divisible chest erupts from the flexible cage of ribs, comes clamoring the heart, bursting for freedom. Besides this, the lungs, ballooned with the world's air. I will spread them apart carefully for you, and they will cover the whole earth. Stomach, bowels then, the beautiful green jewel of the spleen, arms separated, pinned down. These blue veins and their arteries fall over my muscles like petals, and the legs the same. I am nearly a fan now. So carried away am I in this meticulous business at hand. Pain has no consequence. This is for love. Lastly, I've saved my white-yellow bladder and the genital which divides like a drooping flag. My testicles fall down like pearls into your hands. And I have done it on the flower, round and with petals, colorful, vibrating. I have done this for you, much as you asked. Now you must all do something for me, like put me back together, or just stand back and admire. But whatever you decide, it'll take a long time. And I'll end with a triptych that he did, I think somewhere, at least started somewhere in the mid-1990s. The way Martha and I organized the book, it was fairly easy in that when he went to Iowa, he put together a manuscript there as part of his thesis. And then when he moved back to Boston, he had put together a number of manuscripts that he sent off to publishers. He published in just about every major literary magazine of the time. But other than a book called The Inhabited Scroll, published by Northeastern University Press in 1968, none of these books, manuscripts, came into light. We organized them the way that they were submitted. But there is a whole section of them that we call uncollected, that we're not quite sure what they were part of. This triptych was definitely in the 1990s. That's when he started showing them to me, and I really attached to these and gave him lots of comments on them. The Nuclear Virgin. The Virgin Mary in a blood-red robe, stained by the pomegranate of the lamb's cut throat, lets loose a glance sharp as a probe, sparked from within the nuclear I am who am. Like arcs on vacant lots or penal yards, like ovens glowing in exterminating camps, her eyes shine, spotlights shadowless and hard, her incandescence an atomic lamp. We formulate within a sapphire whirl of mossy green, beneath the pure snow white of ice blue cold. Our evolutionary curl of earth crawls upward into cosmic night, while on her solar and celestial arm ignites her newborn son's abyssal calm. Infant Jesus. By kneeling down, we get to see, close up, an oil lamp hisses, spits, and spills gold light. You nest inside it like a golden drop, a bead of butter in a blacked out night. Incense of milk, warm caramel and blood slips from your lips and slips, each breath, small size, small wrists and fists. Around you, dung, hay, wood, cold stone. A cough. You open your eyes and look unfocused all around, wide-eyed, and look unfocused. We look into that look and catch a glint where we're reflected, where we watch outside. You close your eyes. You sleep. What is it meant? That's but the lamp we saw. That was his star, we say, that fired fleck, that turn of nebula. Saint Joseph Genitor. You ground in legend as a young old man whose Galilean nights were trouble-tossed. You walked away before your boy began to really work, not standing at the cross. You're leaning elsewhere, but not there. Up and gone, straightforward daddy once removed, lost boss. He'd love you all the more, your dadless son, who'd spin to twist our father out of loss. Saint Joseph lean. Earth is your walking stick, where double helixes revolve and spin, where ruby DNA, a glowing wick, will flower lilies out, the virgin in. Green grows your brown and wooden niche, your foster fathering of stars coils in. Now I'm going to hand it over to my co-editor who really helped take this book around third base and home into a grand slam by not only providing an incredible, insightful introduction, but really helping me figure out how to shape it and make some really key last minute editorial decisions. And that's Martha Collins. Martha's has published at least 10 books of poetry. Her book, Because What Else I Could Do, 2019 from Pitt, just won the William Carlos Williams Prize. So congratulations for that. She's also published a triptych or a trilogy of her own. I don't know if you think of it that way, but her books Admit One, White Papers, and what I think her best book is Blue Front are all a series of books about race in the United States that I think should be must reading for everybody right now. And I'd be remiss to not mention her book, The Women Carry River Water, her translations of the great Vietnamese poet Nguyen Quang Cho. So thanks, Martha, for joining me in this effort, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Kevin. And thank you so much for inviting me to help you finish up the book. You almost know that Kevin did the majority of the work on the book, but I was really glad to, I don't know, I don't think it was a grand slam. I think I just hit a single to bring him home. And thank you, Gloria, for publishing this wonderful book. And thank you all for being here. Kevin asked me to read a bit from my introduction. Some of what I was going to read, he's already said, so I'll try to be a little more selective here. As Kevin said, Joe was born and raised in Maine. And on his first arrival to Boston in the 1950s, he followed the sounds of Handel's water music from the bus station to the public garden, where members of the Boston Symphony Orchestra were playing on swan boats. That was it, he said. Boston would be his city. As Kevin mentioned, he enrolled at Northeastern. He was a history major, but a professor's recitation of "Do not go gentle into that good night" changed his life. I was just floored, he said. I switched my major to English and started to write poems. And then, as Kevin said, he met George Starbuck, who passed his poems on to Anne Sexton, who wrote to Joe, if you keep going, learning this craft, you will become a great poet. So with their encouragement, Joe went to Iowa City, which is where I met him. I was a graduate student in English, beginning to think I might want to write poems. Joe had a lot to do with my becoming a poet and everything to do with my coming to the East. So writing to the introduction to the book was an act of both gratitude and love for me. When Joe moved back to Boston, as Kevin said, it was to teach at Northeastern. He taught until his retirement in 2008 and was a life-changing presence for many students. It's no exaggeration to refer to his teaching as legendary. Northeastern was also, as Kevin said, the source of his first and almost only published collection. The speaker in one of the poems in that collection dreams he's Schubert, another builds an ark, and in others he becomes a goat and then a giraffe. And then there is Simply to Say, which begins this way. You may not know this, friend, but today the stars came out in broad daylight. It was wonderfully exaggerated. Simply to say, but wonderfully exaggerated. That tension and that balance will continue to describe the poetry of Joe DeRoche. A few years after he came back east, both Joe and his work began to open out. One poem, In the Closet, is set in an actual space with sweaters and moths, but the metaphor is unmistakable. A few years later, Joe, who previously described himself as a lapsed Catholic, began attending Dignity, the gay and lesbian Catholic group, as Kevin mentioned. Led by Jesuits, Dignity Boston provided a spiritual space where both diverse sexualities and intellectual thought were embraced. In the poems he wrote after that, sexual love becomes more explicit, and so does spirituality. Ultimately, the two are inseparable. The culmination of this came when he wrote a series of poems about saints, two of which I'll read in a moment, as well as the trilogy that Kevin read. In the last years of his life, Joe was devoting himself to what a Hindu friend had called making his soul and writing a series of meditations. I'll end by quoting from one of those. This is Joe. I still think that our motions through the universal plasma, however minuscule, have ripples through the immensity, that we belong to the whole and that our present lives will always have been lived and cannot be erased. At any rate, I have always thought that one of the fruits of mortality was that we had the pleasure of living and knowing people now that the future can only imagine and will have missed, save in the echoes that may break through into the future. Joe DeRoche died in 2013, just after Easter. These poems, these ceremonial entries break through as echoes. And now I'll read 5 poems, beginning with animals and ending with saints. Bestiary, goat. Yesterday I decided to become a goat. And when I woke this morning, I had 2 hooves, tufts of hair all over the place, and 1 tail. So I said to myself, just what you asked for, and began to think immediately, sex. I was inordinately preoccupied, and that's the way my day went, all 24 hours of it. But whenever I met someone, I thought Vince, tin cans, erotica everywhere, and they thought goat. So I'm beginning to think, after all, it wasn't worth it. So tomorrow I'll be a gorilla. They live in trees, and birds don't care what you look like, and you don't care, they don't care either, so long as they keep singing. Bestiary, giraffe. I want to be a giraffe so I can see farther than anybody and eat leaves off the tops of the most elaborate trees. Someone told me those are sweetest. I would be greedy beyond belief and no one could care, for even in the middle of famine, giraffes don't eat their friends as lions do, but browse in the pastures of green trees, great tottering monuments. And the lions know how even with my head in the air, I could be brought low. So, with my huge long legs and luck, I could gallop away. Although, if cornered at last, I, of all the animals, would not bow down to my enemies. Giraffes aren't built that way. The breaking in. When he had fallen in love the last time and kept loving what he'd loved before, his heart broke once. When he disappeared into love once too often, this was then the puzzle. 2 goes into 3, how many times? Outside, the spring astonished astonished him as ever, and the birds flew back to his gardens and flocked before him, like pity descending. He found himself reciting over and over again a puzzle. 3 goes into 2, he thought, and saw the flowers multiply like love gone wild. 1 goes into 1 goes into 1, he prayed, when his mind shook, when his heart revolved, when in a house mullioned with mirrors, he reflected only multiple landscapes, and he fell into love over and over and over. Like an unfailing season, he floated towards summer while his heart shot out the bright, shining shards of all he reflected, of all he loved, that threw him like a stone into the riots, the growth, the flowerings, the spring. And now 2 saints' poems. These are actual saints, as seen by Joe. A little song for Saint Mary of Egypt. She was Cairo's golden whore, an endless and revolving door. You know the kind. They'll steal you blind if passion weren't a one-night stand. The kind who will lend a helping hand and only charge a modest fee. For nothing good is ever free. Saint Mary of Egypt, pray for me. Well, she thought she'd take a little trip. She'd cruise so much, she thought a ship would give her rest. She was thrice blessed, the captain, first and second mate, and all the crew became her freight. She sailed to holy, happy ground by sea. Saint Mary of Egypt, pray for me. When they cheered her off the boat, she started her holiday all afloat, 2 inches off the ground, her name renowned. 1,000 hearts would not forget, but in the Holy Land, hard-edged regret pushed her back invisibly, that special cup of tea. Saint Mary of Egypt, pray for me. All of a sudden, she thought of love, the thing she knew God knows most of, the last poor trick where hearts will stick, and the ground moved up to kiss her feet. Her prostituted loves went sweet. She spun by 1 degree, shook off idolatry. Saint Mary of Egypt, pray for me. Mary understood how she could skate clear across where most folk love or hate. She let her hair grow long, became a hermit for a song. Dressed in her hair like a little bird, she perched without a word upon God's tree. They let her be. Saint Mary of Egypt, pray for me. I sing you her song because of this, as there are many ways to kiss or ways to hit or take the bit between our teeth. Some of us will say her first life or her last's the better way. What's that to you or me? In spirit or in body, she loved most liberally. Saint Mary of Egypt, pray for me. And I'll end with Saint Alred's dance. They raised him up to serve his king. They taught him wit. They made him fit to serve in everything, to conquer with the glance, the fickleness of chance. In song, in dance, in gay musique, he learned to step, to kick, to turn, to bow, to trick his courtly partners into grace. His handsome face illuminated space. Love, in a word, became his God. Alred danced before his Lord. Good servant that he always was, he gave his all. He had a call to give great matters pause, and he loved men. It follows then he drew to bed the prince and bred with him instead of kin the art of love and all the wonders of the flesh-made word. A love-struck God. Aelred danced before his Lord, and danced and giddily advanced. His loving grew, and not a few entered his heart and were entranced, and loved him more. And Aelred saw not that love will go away, merely that it will not stay, and grows each royal day, and pilgriming abroad may hunt out God, that lovers dance before the Lord. Thus Aelred hungered for the grace but never stayed at rest and prayed to spend forever in a dancing place. It's not from sin he entered in an abbey on an English hill and taught us tenderly how will bind with love, but to fulfill his self. And God took him as he was and had to be, most happily, into his courtly, regal peace, to please the saints and without cease intoxicate the narrow way. Divinely gay, his dance, his pay for room and board. Saint Alred dances before the Lord. Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. That was terrific. Gloria has asked me to read from my chapbook. It was great to dig it out from 2008. I'll read a handful of these, and then we'll open it up for a conversation about Joe or anything you want to talk about. The book was called Isolate Flecks, and I mentioned that Martha won the William Carlos Williams Award this year. Isolate Flecks comes from one of the great William Carlos Williams poems, To Elsie. It's only an isolate flex that something is given off. I should also note that the cover is a photograph of Gloucester, Massachusetts during the St. Peter's Fiesta, done by a great photographer, Ann Rierick, and thank her for that photograph. First poem I'll read is called Day and Night. Comfortable, as if in a cocoon, a woman sways in a hammock, surrounded by hanging purple lilacs. A Cleopatra in a dove's wing with dangling grapes. I lounge with my feet up on my desk, thinking about my scene and acting out hers all day long, until the spring moon is echoed by the hole in my black sock. She made it home before blinking. She made it home without blinking. It's been 12 years. While speeding home on her bicycle, the ashes that crossed her forehead lit the way as if they were the light on a coal miner's hard hat. While she jumped over potholes and subway tracks, her silver confirmation cross knocked on her heart, wiggling like a silver lake between two mountains. A bead of sweat slid across that lake, proving water can be walked on. Liberty Tree Mall landscape. There is a modest parade of frosty sport utility vehicles idling in an air-conditioned line that starts in front of Vinnie Testa's and goes way past the shopping carts at the Target. A blue sky is drawn overhead, no clouds. Just through the revolving doors that sparkle under the sun, like brand new diamonds, stands a 15-year-old girl covering the ring on her belly button with one hand, and the other hand is on her hip. You can almost see her comic strip bubble screaming, "Why does mom have to dress like that while picking me up from the mall?" A couple baseball poems. This one's called The Kid's Economy. I'll admit Bernie Carbo's card meant more to me than any lousy dollar bill. I took pride in that then, and always will. Gosh, in those days, I had so much wealth stored in my bedroom, you couldn't see the floor. It was chock full of King Ken dolls just killed by the G.I. Joe on my windowsill. I didn't get the G.I. Joe at a store. I traded for a pack of baseball cards, a pack of Razzles, and a Hot Wheels car. You know, after I closed that deal, I ran, because those agreements don't go too far when you're dealing with a Yankee fan, even though we said no trade backs and shook hands. Louis Tiant Fan Club alumnus. Although Freddie will always be sour that his sister went and traded his tops Ted Williams and Roberto Clemente for a box of stupid Matchbox cars. He still fondly remembers having a hot dog and a beer every inning, every Sunday he could at Fenway Park from 1975 to 1985. After warming up for a few innings, he'd stand in the middle of a row and scream, "Dominoes!" then laughed after one person after another had to pop up to let him get by for another pair. Composition in blue, noir, et rouge. Freddie went to New York City to see the big new Piet Mondrian exhibit. It was his wife's idea, but he loved it. "There's no better place I'd rather be," he assured her. She was worried that he was wearing a smile, but having a fit. It had been years since she had seen him sit in front of anything but a TV for more than 15 minutes. But he sat in front of the same 40-inch painting for the whole afternoon. She thought, what in heaven's name is that man thinking? He later remarked that he felt right at home that day. "It was like I was watching a game, and the emergency station identification colors popped on." Tiny little drinking village with a fishing problem. I'm the only one in the house that works, yet I'm the one who's turning 70. Daughter got knocked up when she was 15, then the dope that stung her moved right in once we got the kid back from the state. Whatever his name is was working until he got another dame pregnant. He got depressed and went on welfare, so this girl and the new kid move in too. On top of all this, he's got 2 dogs he won't walk, so I make him shit out back. So you think I care when the neighbor calls to tell me his wife can't stand the dog shit and they want to express their concern that they heard someone in my house last night screaming, "Next time I'm gonna kill you"? INRI, I-N-R-I. During Mass, we kids would tug the moms' dresses, point to the insignia above the cross and proclaim, "I know what that means, Ma." Overwhelmed with our interest in the Lord, they would crouch down and whisper, "What?" We'd laugh out, "Made in Rhode Island." She'd squeeze our hands and do laps around the rosary. The women would roll ravioli for a week, then serve it Sunday after church. After 3 helpings, Grandpa would say, "Time to see a man about a horse." When he was done, the other men would join him in the living room, pants unbound. The women would drink coffee and clean up. One night when my Nana was bathing me, I pointed between my legs and screamed, "This is my penis." Nana ignored me, covered my mouth, and launched right into "This little piggy went to market" on my toes. But I pointed back to her and yelled, "And you have a vagina." "No, I don't," she replied. This is how things were done here, because this is the way things were done in the old country, where almost everyone drove a Fiat. When Fiat started marketing to us here, we drove them thinking Federal Hill was Rome until they started to break down at every turn. And then we renamed Fiat, F-I-A-T. Fix it again, Tony. At the wedding, a little girl, like a bee starved of pollen, under the sun in spring, bounced from one set of lips to another in a light yellow dress, lacing together all her relatives who hadn't kissed one another in quite some time. Galatea and her pig. He made his doll into the perfect catch. He cast her with a permanent smile. At parties, she laughed at just the right times. He'd boast, "She was just an egg about to hatch. I took her in, sculpted her from scratch, and look at her now. There's no better prize." To his credit, she pleased everyone's eyes. To his proud arm, she was always attached. But nah, he hardly ever let her speak. "Women this pretty don't have minds," he'd say. But one evening when he was fast asleep, she lipsticked him a note on the window shade. When he woke, he rubbed his eyes to read, "I'm sick of your shit, and I leave with your face." Last poem I'll read is Natives. A pumpkin head with a bamboo backbone overalls and red high tops, has a potbelly of hay. In file, supporting him, are droves of green legions, armed and holding golden grenades of corn. Thanks a lot. So I know there's a lot of folks here who knew Joe DeRoche, some before Martha and I, some well after. We got a lot of great. I've been shocked about how many people knew him. Both Charles Coe and Richard Cambridge both said they couldn't join us tonight, but both of them had him as a teacher. I know many of you have engaged with him. So we wanted to give folks an opportunity to share any remembrances, ask any questions. But we're going to start with John Mulrooney. If you're not reading your Nietzsche book there, John, because John has a really interesting surprise. John, in addition to being one of Boston's great poets, a rock star, and a filmmaker, he is also one of the great chroniclers of poetry in Boston. If there's a film or an audio recording of a reading, he has it. And last night, he did a big archaeological dig and found a poetry reading by Joe DeRoche in 1990-something. And he's going to play us some of Joe himself.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Everyone can hear me? You can hear me? All right, perfect. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have all the tapes, but this comes to us really through the largesse of Sean Cole. I might remember Sean Cole, who was a poet who lived in Boston for many years. He's down in New York now, and through his work for NPR, he was always recording things. So so we sort of added his recordings to my archives, and I've been slowly in the process of digitizing them since I got them. And I came upon this. This recording is actually from August of 2001. And it's just a couple of poems. This is a reading, and this also the other person we would thank for this is Jim Burley, who I imagine a few of you probably know, this was his reading series. This was at the old Wordsworth in Harvard Square. This is with the poet Kevin Grant and Joe DeRoche reading. And we're just going to play the last couple of poems of Joe's, one of which is in the book, and one of which is not. I don't know if being anyone else. I was at this reading. I think this is maybe the one of maybe two times I met Joe. So if you will, I can do the share screen, right? Let me get over to. Hold on for just a moment. So this should be, no, I don't want that. I think I want this one. And I'm just going to unplug this headphone to make sure that you guys have better, clearer audio. Although, Kevin, if you can just give me the thumbs up that this audio is coming through. A couple little more.
I want to read this poem because I like this poem, and it brought me someplace where I didn't think it was going to take me. It's a little poem. It's called Bagging Autumn Leaves. And I started writing it because I wanted people to recall what it was when you burnt leaves. Do you remember we used to burn leaves? It's pollution now in Brookline and Boston and all these places. It isn't pollution, it's incense. That's what it was. It's a wonderful smell. And it's lost, it's gone. Bye-bye, one more thing down the drain. But I thought I wanted to capture it in a poem. And so that was what I was working on. But it dragged me someplace I didn't expect to go. So if you've heard it before, forgive me. One or two of you have, but I really like this one. It's called Bagging Autumn Leaves. Some things that come with autumn do not change. Once you felt fall once, you smell the chill, not feel it. Past remembered cold seems strange. The green goes gold or red, and leavings spill a paper rustle across the driveway and the lawn. As ever, we rake leaves up the same and feel the weight each gathers as we pull upon the pile we lumber when we haul the reel. Years past, my father and I made a mound. We took a match and turned the leaves to flame. A smoke and incense fumed the neighborhood around. Like sacrifice, we immolated every year the same. I smell those years, burned spice. My father's dead. I did not wrap him greenly up when I let go. But like the leaves the trees obscenely shed, I carried him in smoke and ash to snow. And one little last poem, which is a new one, which has to do with the fact that the nice thing about these little gatherings is that in this instant, you know, new people and old people and people are in a space that'll never come again. I mean, that's the nice thing about the live performance. We're not, you know, all of us together are here and nowhere else. And I like that concept every once in a while. Even when I'm bored with myself, I sometimes excite myself by saying, gee, you're here all by yourself. Nobody else is. So it's called Right Now. What I did yesterday is such old news. Tomorrow's plans like skin, alas, can bruise. I count on not one thing except I'm here. And soon as you hear this, I'm likely over there. Memory fails, paper burns, computers crash. Hard facts get tossed each week like so much trash. Our friends, our marriages, our lives go out. The universal drift is but a route. Well, let it go, or let it come. Right now we are together. This one day, this small hour. So common, but so brilliant when it's filled up to the brim. But then, of course, it's spilled. Even our names on granite tombstones fade. None of this matters when we're in parade, waving banners, blaring trumpets, banging drums. In life we march a unit, though by sums this brief second has no proper name. Time is the animal we cannot tame. Let's breathe in the moment that will not die. The line before it's read. The past untied from all it should have been. So there. Hello. This one will never come again. Just so. Thank you.
Well, you were wrong about that, Joe. It did come again. Thanks so much, John Mulroney, for that big archaeological dig and for sharing that with us. That's just incredible. Frank Blessington, are you still on? I know you wanted to share something.
Am I on? Okay.
Sorry about that.
I would just briefly give a couple of things. First of all, an incident with Joe, and then a poem by Joe I'd like to read. Here, I taught with Joe for over 40 years. I socialized with him sometimes. I'm sure I didn't know him as well as some of you did. And we often, we read at the same podiums several times. But when I started poetry, he was an instructor at Northeastern when I first came. I don't remember whether I was a graduate student or whether I was a beginning instructor at the time, but I had made up a bunch of poems and I sent them to him. And he said he would like to read them. And then I never heard from him. So I said, well, I'm gonna track this guy down. So I got his schedule, and I waited in the corridor one day when he was coming to class, and I sort of jumped out at him and said, well, what about the poems that I sent to you? And okay, so this will get you into the poem. The title of the poem is Panhandler. That's me. And and the first line is a line I wrote, and the second line is Joe's reaction. What beauty bribed a shepherd for this day? No! I would not have concocted that after I accosted you in a green corridor, heading to teach. I asked if you had anything to offer for the poems I left. You rose tiptoe, lifted your eyes like an exasperated saint, and sighed, you're trying to be Keats. My poems scattered like startled sheep at your blasting trimeter. Honest words, your spare change, changed my life. Okay, so I would like to read a poem no one read, just one poem. The last poem in the collection, called Orpheus Sings. I cannot, of course, recreate Joe's drawl or his gestures, but certainly this is a good idea, I think, to end his book with, as it kind of sums up many things in Joe, called Orpheus Sings. You cannot hear me in the daily din, among the horns and clatter, cars, buses, subway trains, the chatter, urgent matter packs you in. Well, when you lie at 3 a.m., tormented out of sleep or craving light, I am the rising dawn you cannot see, the dreams you drift upon. I am the music coming on. I am he. My fingers that flow down through your hair, my side that brushes past your ear, you misconstrue as breeze. On moonless nights, my lush blue-green awash the shore just out of sight. You hear his sound and think, the seas. Behind the glow in the morning fog, almost found, but always, always out of reach, find me. These concrete notes that fill the page, you can collect and recollect. But when I play my strummings that won't stay, relay those single lines into a classic place, like classic grace, where we entwine a line into design, and I spill into the common clamor, the incessant stammer, my untimely glamour, harmony. One moment you can't recall when you were looking elsewhere, there, not here, deeply buried and engulfed in someone else, in self. I eyed you all alone. I stole your name, your solitary tone. I carry you alone, outside of me. Besieged by rhyme, I let you live. I give, you will not die. Dust and ashes fall away. Yesterday, tomorrow, and today, I make you song. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Frank Blessington, Professor Emeritus at Northeastern University.
Not emeritus, no,
Oh.
not emeritus yet.
Uh,
You're not suggesting that, are you?
no, you got to keep going, especially now. Anyone else want to share thoughts, ask questions about? There's a lot of folks here who know him. If not, we can move on.
Kevin, could I say something?
Please.
So I was a student at Northeastern from 1988 to 1993, and it's good to see my old professor, Frank Blessington. Thank you for the classical backgrounds class that you taught us English majors then, and for teaching us to love Homer and Virgil. And I met Joe when I was editor of Northeastern's literary magazine called The Spectrum. And Joe kindly one year gave us a poem of his to publish. And after that, I had the good fortune of taking some classes with Joe. And after I graduated, we stayed in touch, and he and I, we'd meet for dinner from time to time. And last year, one day, I was thinking about Joe. I was at Walden Pond, and I don't know why, but for some reason, I was remembering a class that he taught on James Dickey. And I was thinking about James Dickey's poem, The Heaven of Animals. And I was thinking, gosh, I'm not sure I have a collection of Dickey's poetry, and I'd really like to have that and go over my notes about what Joe said about that poem and The Strength of Fields and some other poems by Dickey. So I went from there to the Porter Square bookstore, and looking on the row of poetry shelf, and I'm going through the authors B, C, D, and they didn't have anything by James Dickey, but they did have this. And I was just really struck by, 30 years later, I'm thinking about this professor and this poet, and I go to a bookstore to get a book of poetry, and I find a book by him of his poems. And I was really happy to see my former classmate Kevin Gallagher's name on this. And just seeing that gave me a lot of confidence that this would be something that would be put together with a lot of professionalism and sensitivity. And Kevin, I've said it before, but thank you again for this project. I don't know how else I would have found all of Joe's poetry. I have a file of it. I have the one that he published in the Spectrum, but I don't have anything like, quite like this. I ran to the counter with this at Porter Square Books. It just seemed too good to be true. But I think just the fact that I was a student of his 30 years ago, and I'm still thinking about him and the things that he taught me, and that the love of poetry that he instilled in me. That was just a really incredible day finding this, and it's so wonderful that we're having this night to celebrate this publication and to celebrate Joe. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Derek. Any other comments, or should we leave it there? Well, again, we're here to celebrate Joe. We're also here to celebrate 15 years. Everyone thanked myself and Martha, but obviously it was Gloria who put these wonderful poems in between a wonderful cover. And as you heard her say, it's only one of a couple hundred. I put a link here in the chat where you can order. If you hadn't heard of Joe DeRoche before, if you don't have a copy of this book, you can easily go get it through get this link that I just provided. Please tell your friends about it. Alumni from Northeastern, other poets around the world. And Gloria, maybe you can share with us some of the other readings that you might be having in this wonderful celebration of your 15th anniversary.
Yes, tomorrow, actually, let me pull the sheet here. We have Miriam O'Neill and David Surratt reading. And then on the next day, Michael Keith and Gregory Wallace, and that will be a night of fiction. And then you heard RJ speak earlier. He'll be reading Thursday along with Melissa Studdard. And again, there's more, and of course with August. So please be sure to check the Cervena homepage for the schedule. It's on Facebook too, and tomorrow the August schedule will be on Facebook. And I just can't thank you enough, Kevin and Martha. It was a real honor to do the book, and a joy for me not knowing him and reading the poetry and laying out the book. I felt like I got to know him more and more, and also through your eyes, through this event, and then also at Porter Square Books when you did the launch. And it's been a real big honor for me. And to those of you that shared tonight, the poetry, the audio, I mean, that was so wonderful. And it was nice to hear his voice. What a great reading voice. Oh my God, that kind of deepness, and just, oh, I could listen to him forever. You know, it was really special. So really, thank you so much, everybody, for, coming to the reading and sharing this celebration of 15 years, but also sharing the work of such great poets, the community we have here. I mean, I just love it. And I tell others from different parts of the country that I've published and know just how special it is here. And so again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gloria, and congratulations on 15 years.
Thank you. Thank you. So I guess that will be it for tonight. And again, thank you so much. Okay, nighty night.